Is that how you always know? Or are we just so in tune?
Twitch gives notifications. Like if you have,
they send out. Is it push notifications?
Yeah. If you have the app, and you have your notifications on, it'll tell you when the people you're following are going live, which is pretty cool. It's pretty cool. All right, I'm on Twitch. Prop 50. Oh shit! Shut up. Yeah, Prop 50 too. Fucking passed.
All right. KIPER's back. Ari is live. Is everyone good?
I think I'm good.
John, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, cool.
Perfect.
All right. I'm going to go live on TikTok right now.
Yep.
And if you guys just want to join that. All right. I'm live on TikTok as well. And we'll just want to turn the volume down on the phones.
Yep.
Oh, excuse me. Good here. I'll share this bad boy.
John, your breathing is a little hot in that mic, just so you know.
Oh, sorry.
Just a friendly warning. All right, we good to go, guys?
Hell yeah.
Everybody's locked in. Happy Wednesday. It feels like a real happy day. How we doing? How are you doing?
Fantastic. I haven't woken up with, I mean, it's not like, I'm not going crazy here, but the hope I woke up with today is, I think it's a little bit, I think everyone is feeling like a little bit of oomph today, a little bit of just hope, like something has changed. Something has the record is skipping for a moment here. So I'm excited. I'm excited to talk to John about it too. How you doing, John?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on. This is an exciting day.
Absolutely.
Were you guys watching the election results come in last night? What jumped out to y'all this morning? For anybody that's coming in hot and doesn't know what's going on, what jumped out? Aria, I know you've been digging into it this morning. What kind of jumped out at you?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, these are just preliminary kind of demographics that are coming out. You never really get like a full view of what's going on in these elections, but not only did Democrats kind of like sweep the board in general, they won by more than anyone expected in these races. Like in Virginia, they're back into like a super majority. Prop 50 passed in California, which was the redistricting prop. They were afraid because California is obviously does things democratically. They're going to put a vote up for redistricting, right? And they were afraid that wouldn't pass. There would be a Republican push, but no, it passed. And again, big wins in New Jersey, big win in big win in Virginia. Again, over there, we talked about that. And then, obviously the biggest win, right? The biggest win, the kind of like the great hope, the kind of like, I think that is the breaking of the glass a little bit that we're talking about, like the safety glass. I think we see it firsthand now. And again, I think people really need to dig into the numbers of these votes, because we are seeing trends now that are going to be very scary for the GOP. They're kind of banking on their young men, like the Gen Z men that we've been hearing about in the news, young Republicans, and, the whole podcast conversation. And I feel like the numbers, the metrics that are coming out is showing they have lost that, like they're losing that demographic. So that is the future of the Republican Party, right? So if they lose that, it's not looking good.
Bridget's in the comments mentioning too that there's some great ballot measures that passed: free lunches for kids in Colorado, no voter suppression in Maine. I think we're just, I think one of the themes for me is like we're starting to see these ideas become mainstream that were once considered fringe, and now they're becoming obvious and conceptual to people. And I think there's like great power in that, and seeing these things can actually come to fruition. And so I think seeing that kind of, feeling that like energy of these ideas are palatable to people and people are starting to understand that it's realistic. I said to you this morning, I was like, everyone's being socialist on Maine today. Like everybody is just on TikTok today being like, I'm gonna say what I feel and I'm not gonna shy away from it anymore. It like really kind of pulled this it's just shining some light, and I think it's pretty interesting. John, what did your sort of experience following this last night look like? What are your reactions? What kind of are you seeing from people?
So I spent at least part of the day out holding signs with Jess Spillers in Manchester, and
Oh, did we lose him? Oh no, never mind.
I got you. You're good.
I was watching a lot of the local races, which we did really well. And Jess did not win Manchester, but she frankly did a lot better than I think people expected her to. And I would love to see her run again because now she's established some name recognition. She's walked all over the city of Manchester. But talking about the national races, it was really funny. I was watching ABC News last night, and they had Donna Brazil. Is it Brazil? I think
Mhm.
she used to be
Mm,
the chair of the party, and it was so
I heard
funny
that
because
name
they were
in a
like, "Hey,
while.
yeah," they were like, "Hey, let's talk about Zohran's win, right?" And they go to this montage of photos of him, and she immediately goes, yeah, well, that was great, but let's talk about the other races that the Democrats won, and immediately pivoted to talking about New Jersey and Virginia. And it was so funny because they had the montage of Zohran kept going up. And so they're showing photos of Zohran, and she's not talking about Zohran. And it's like, you can't even make these people talk about him more than they want to, And I was just like, I thought it was just so emblematic of how they've treated him. And I'm psyched because, like, I did not think he was going to win the primary. And frankly, when he did, that was one of the motivating factors to me getting back onto the Democratic Party. It was because I realized, like, hey, you don't have to, you can win, especially now. You can win outside of the party, you know, good graces, and you can swim against the stream and you can still win. And, somebody said this to me at one point. They said, the establishment Democrats have a lot of money and they have a lot of power, but at the end of the day, they only have as many votes as there are people in the than you and I and the population has. And as long as like we stay motivated, we can win these elections. I mean, Zohran obviously showed that it's possible. And the other important takeaway that I don't think a lot of people have thought about is so Cuomo lost in the primary and then went along to run as an independent general election. And I did not hear any Democrats saying that that was bad. I didn't hear anyone vocally saying that he shouldn't do that. That is a dangerous precedent for the Democrats to set, because if progressives start saying, "Hey, I'm going to lose in this primary. I'm just going to bow out and run in the independent as an independent in the general election." Apparently, Cuomo did it, and it's fine. That's dangerous. And the fact that they don't realize how dangerous that is, to me, just proves how naive a lot of people in the Democratic Party are. They think that we're like a captive audience, but it's like if Zoran's showing that like you can do it through the Democratic Party, but that race is also showing, hey, if you don't want to play with the Democrats in the primary, you can just go around them and go straight to the general.
Yeah, you're right. That is, we did kind of glaze over that piece of it, right? No one was surprised when it happened, but that angle I do think is something that we didn't really like process through. I'm curious, I've been following a bit. I'm looking at 603 Forward did some good kind of recapping on some of the elections and how they panned out. And there was obviously some really big wins for some of these progressive candidates. Anything else, John, or Aria, that maybe you guys noticed locally that came through that you wanted to mention? I know some of the races are still kind of aren't sort of officially called yet.
One huge race in Manchester was Joe Kelly Lavasser getting kicked out of the alderman seat because he has just been the worst. He's just like the worst type of MAGA, local like conservative who just he's cruel, he's mean, he literally bullies people, he makes fun of people's appearance, like he's just like the worst type of politician, just really pushing the partisan buttons, and just you know good riddance to him, if nothing, if like so that there's Manchester did really well, and I think that bodes well for the state.
Yeah, and
Can't hear you.
yeah, I got you. Sorry, I'm silly. I think there's something to be said here too, and I think you can connect it to that race as well, the local race, which is something we have to keep in mind here. Which and John, you mentioned it, and it's something that I noticed right away. I hate to be like the bad news bear here, but there is something important about New York, and to add to what you were saying about the precedent New York Democrats, which again, that's the mainstream, that's the establishment central, that's establishment hub, right? Like Schumer's, Jeffries, that's where the mainstream is. Cuomo, the political dynasty, right? And even with the victory at hand, the win is there. They know he's going to win outside of some kind of miracle. They still won't endorse him. Obama wouldn't endorse him.
Yeah.
Kamala Harris wouldn't endorse him. Chuck Schumer wouldn't endorse him. They actually ran someone else to, like you said, to try to beat him. There are some winners out of this too. Like Kathy Hochul had bigger balls than all those men put together, and she's and she's kind of conservative coded governor too. She's not exactly like the most liberal Democrat. She saw it for what it was, and I think that people need to be careful here when they look at these races. It's very exciting, but it feels as if the major motivator here is Trump. Not so much I know Mamdani had a great message and a great race, but the governor that won in New Jersey, Mikey Sherrill, she is also, she's good, but she's taking AIPAC money. She's a corporate Democrat still. So I want to message out to people, and I'll definitely let you guys take it. Awesome. We celebrate, we take this win, and then we see that it is still, there are red flags going off within the party that they are still not willing to jump on the voter bandwagon.
Yeah, I think it's kind of telling that rather than looking at the DSA as an ally and saying oh, we could grow our tent by agreeing with the DSA on the things that we agree on, disagreeing on the things we disagree on, keep them in the tent. Their attitude is, we don't want them. And it's just did you guys learn nothing from the last election? Anyone who's batting for Democrats, even if you only agree with them 70% of the time, that's better than having a Republican win, And I mean, and this is also kind of how I feel about, the AIPAC money. It's I'd rather have a Democrat who took AIPAC money than a MAGA Republican, even though that's not obviously ideal. In the hierarchy of needs, we'd be in a better position to get rid of the AIPAC money if we had more of Zohrans in power, I guess. If we can show that, because it, it's so stupid, because it just comes down to this whole thing where they think if they don't take the money, the Republicans going to get twice the money, and AIPAC's going to put $1 billion into whoever they're running against. And that has been true for some of these races. But the reality AIPAC and just donate directly to candidates. So we could be in a situation where it's much harder to track this money if they stop using AIPAC as the vessel for the donations.
All right, I wanted to give you a chance. I don't know if you want to respond to that before we shift gears.
No, I mean, I think John, he makes a good point. I think there's a great point to be made here, and I think the only problematic thing that I have a minor little pushback here with you, John, and I would love to hear, is that there was a point where I felt I talk to Marissa about this all the time, where I feel we were using Republicans as the cudgel, like beware what's coming. Beware what's coming. The fascists are coming, the bad guys are coming, but they're here now. And my question now is, if they're already here and you can't use that as a cudgel anymore, like you can't say, well, they're coming, well, they're here. What do we want? Like, what is going to convince people to show up to vote those kind of, like, again, Mikey Sherrill, the reason she ran, and again, the reason, in my opinion, I think the reason she won by so much is because of the anti-Trump sentiment, because of what you're expressing right now, which I think is very strong. I do think it is a very strong sentiment and a valuable sentiment. But when Trump is gone, we're still going to be left with a bunch of these corporatist, like liberal, pro-Wall Street, pro-military. And at a certain point, I feel like the vote, like what you said about Cuomo, vote blue no matter who, right? That was a hell of a conversation. That was a hell of a talking point until we gave you a blue candidate and you were like, well, not like this, you know, like that's not what we meant by blue no matter who, right?
Yeah.
So the I think a lot of us are like shell shocked a little bit still by 2024, even like 2016, where what are we falling in line for? Like there was something we were falling in line for. There was like something that really major contrast between these two parties. But I feel like I'm becoming more militantly, no, like I know what I want. Like if someone, and I'm not telling people this is what they should do, but it's like one of those things where, yes, I'm not going to straight up, my line in the sand is, if you do not condemn genocide, you do not openly say you're anti-ICE, and you do not openly say we're looking for justice here, even like people condemn, you know, human rights injustices that have happened under this administration, breaking the law. Like those are like lines for me. It's hard for me to vote for someone who, again, even now, because we're already in it. So like to vote for someone who's pro-genocide still is just, I don't know if we can use the Republicans anymore. And I'm talking about a strategy over, not just for me. I think I'm a little bit more unhinged than the normal voter. That's fine. But like the normal human beings that live amongst us, right? Like I'm talking about normal everyday people. I think it's becoming a big deal for them, even not just for like internet leftists. I think, I don't know if you've experienced that too. And Marissa, I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, I want to hear John's response. I just had a couple of quick kind of thoughts that were coming up right now. Is I feel like these results, that these different races we're talking about, I think there's like two types of people right now, where there's the folks that think Trump is the problem, and that once we get rid of Trump, the problem will improve, and that feels like it's more aligned with like an establishment way of thinking. And then there's the folks that I think Ari and I would consider ourselves part of the second bucket, which is folks that sort of understand that actually the systems are the problem, and that someone's in the comment talking about technocrats and corporate money and all of this stuff is folks have really woken up to the fact that even if Trump goes away tomorrow, these problems are still, these have set the foundation for the problem that we're in today. So I think that as we're kind of analyzing that, we are kind of sort of sitting in two different groups. And then the other thing I wanted to lastly say, and some folks were saying this in the comments as well, is that like we're kind of putting the cart before the horse with this conversation. And that I personally, like, I agree with Arya on a lot of this stuff. But my perspective is like, I don't even want to bring up the idea of compromise until after the primary, right? Because if we do that, we're showing our hand. And I think that's just like
True. Yeah.
negotiation 101. You know, you don't tell people, I'll give this up. If you guys win, it's fine. It's like, we have to say what we deserve, and we deserve to live in a country where our tax dollars aren't going to bombs in other countries. I think that's like a very reasonable baseline to set. I don't think that's crazy. Yeah, John, go ahead.
Like an empty vessel or a venue through which you can like gain power, which is kind of how I look at it. And like, I think Zohran must have looked at it the same way, because there was a time when I literally said, when I was running as an independent, and I said, do I want to be on a stage with someone who takes APAC money? Or in 2024, it was, do I want to be on a stage with Cindy Warmington, who is a lobbyist for Purdue Pharma? Because if the Democrats are the party of lobbyists for Purdue Pharma, I don't want to be a part of that party. But I came to realize that I could have run as an independent and I would have gotten nowhere. You know what I mean? So it's like I can use the party to gain like political to gain political like power, even if I don't align with everyone, or I can be like completely true to myself, but maybe have no avenue for gaining power. So I guess that's like kind of the constant moral like dilemma is like, and I mean, like, this is what I was saying before. And I honestly don't know the answer to this because it's such a difficult question of, is it better to vote for a Democrat who takes APEC money or vote for maybe an independent who has no chance of winning or not voting at all? And like, I don't know. I mean, like when Kamala was running and she wouldn't speak out about genocide, I fully understood anyone that didn't want to vote for her. Totally got that. I understood that part. For me, it was like, well, I potentially see Trump as being more problematic and like than Kamala in a bigger sense, even just like thinking about the environment, like at some point, whatever's happening in Gaza, the genocide will end, but like the pollution of, microplastics, PFAS, and global warming will go on forever. So even like, because on my core, like if I was going to only run and discuss one thing, it would be the environment, because I feel like that goes beyond all of these issues where like, who cares what the property taxes are if my kid's going to die of cancer, like, or my grandkid's going to die of cancer at 20, or like, to me, the environment is like the primal issue, but I can't run on that because I would never win. So it's like, and obviously like I'm running on issues, property taxes, housing, and education funding that I care a lot about. And they're also issues that I think will help me get elected. But like morally, if I wanted to just run on things that I cared about, it would be like almost entirely environmental, because like in some ways that's more important. So I guess we're constantly having to make these decisions between being pragmatic and being idealistic. And I think the trick is just, understanding that sometimes you got to be one and sometimes you got to be the other. I think it is really hard. And like if Zohran had ran just as a Democratic Socialist, not as a Democrat, would he have won? Maybe. I mean, he was pretty popular. But that was a calculation that he took to run as a Democrat. It's one that, Bernie Sanders, when he was running for president, made that calculation too. And that's where it's like, in some ways, it's kind of like the insurgent thing, to use your enemy's resources. You know what I mean? To use your not enemy, but like to use the corporate Democrats' resources in a way that would further your aims, even if you don't completely agree with them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I wanna go in on one thing that you mentioned and just kind of give you a little bit of room to talk about it, because, you're talking about the environmental piece, and I know that's kind of not the point of where you're going, but I think it's relevant. And Ari and I were talking about this topic specifically around like the PFAS and the stuff happening in the water. Can you talk a little bit about what is happening with that in New Hampshire for folks who aren't paying attention in terms of like the cancer rates and things like that? And I think a lot of folks maybe here aren't familiar with what we're talking about here.
Sure. So there's a woman named Mindy Mesner, who I believe is from Rye, and I only know about this because of her. She ran for executive council a couple cycles ago, but she went around the state doing these filming or video screenings of a movie called, God, it's like Silent Killer or something like that. It's kind of an Aaron Brockovich style situation where, people were getting this chemical contamination and they didn't exactly know where it was from. But long story short, 3M created this chemical like Teflon that's a non-stick substance for a number of uses. And they created it in the 60s or 70s.
Hey, John, I just want to pause you for a second because
Yeah.
I think your TikTok is paused, and I just want to make sure people can
Oh.
hear you.
Sorry. Yep, no worries. Sorry, I got a text message from Adam Sexton asking me to respond to a tweet from Kelly Ayotte, and I'm like,
oh shit!
What is it? Do it live.
This is
Tell him
live.
to
Yeah, this is breaking news.
Give him the Twitch link.
Well, so it's funny. Yeah. Anyway, we could talk about that later.
I'm gonna
but
pull
yeah,
it up. I'm gonna pull it up.
So
You keep
basically,
talking. You keep talking. I'm gonna pull it up, John.
3M pulled up, invented this PFAS, these forever chemicals that basically do not eliminate. They can't be eliminated in the environment. And this is a scary thing, right? 3M I think it was in the 90s, they said, hey, we've been making these chemicals for 20 years in our factories. We should test our employees and see how much of the PFAS they have in their blood. And they tested them and it was really high. And they said, okay, we need to find a clean blood sample so we can compare it to our employees and see, what's an average amount of PFAS versus zero PFAS, right? So they started looking for blood that didn't have PFAS in it, right? And they went all over the world. They went to little tribes in Africa and little tribes in South America trying to find blood without PFAS, and they could not find it because PFAS is in every single human on Earth right now. And they literally had to get blood out of
Cool.
out of a blood bank from U.S. military from the Korean War, because the Korean War was prior to the invention of PFAS. And they don't know what they do. They accumulate in your body. They have been linked to some cancers and stuff like that. But basically, there was a company in Merrimack called Saint-Gobain that was emitting a lot of PFOAs. And so they got shut down recently, but that area is still highly contaminated. And it's a question of, who's going to pay for it and the long-term damage. And there's a lot of unknowns with PFAS. That's kind of the biggest issue is, you'll have some people say, oh, it hasn't been proven that they cause anything bad, but it's like, it's a chemical that's in your blood forever, and it builds up and builds up and builds up.
Yeah, and it ties
Yeah,
back
so
to it's tying back to corporations and having no kind of oversight to corporate interests. So people are
right,
talking
and
about
they're
that, but
outsourcing their pollution to us. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So I just wanted to click on that for a second because I think that's relevant, and we are not talking about the environment enough. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Arya.
No, I'm just trying to dig out what this amazing tweet is that Kelly Ayotte sent, because I just see a tweet in the last hour about live from New York. It's New Hampshire.
I think it's the trucks. Yeah, I think it's the trucks in New York that she's trying to get people to move to New Hampshire.
Oh yeah, look at these. Look at these
Oh.
the visuals. I don't know if you guys can see them. Let me see if I can expand it. This is Kelly
Whose
Ayotte's
money are we spending on this?
That's a great
It's
question.
hers. It was paid for by Kelly,
Oh, cool.
like Kelly for New Hampshire or something.
Yeah,
Well,
so
I think my response tweet or my response comment is going to be, how many people on food stamps could that have fed? Good, the payment for those.
let's go.
advertisements.
Yeah.
This is so stupid.
Absolutely. And I mean, like, just for those that don't, I know I have some friends in here and people that are outside of New Hampshire. Governor Kelly Ayotte is the Republican governor of New Hampshire. Terrible. I mean, one of the I think morally worst governors in the country, and obviously John is going to replace her with our help in 2026. And this is her Twitter account showing
Definitely.
And
she's
also, just to interrupt
Yeah, go
you, we're on Twitch as well. So people
Twitch as
will
well.
ask,
Sorry.
what's
Yes.
going on? Yeah,
we are on Twitch.
We're screen sharing on Twitch. So just reminding people. Go ahead, Arya.
And if you aren't in Twitch, I mean, we're showing in New York City. There's a tweet by Governor Kelly Ayotte of one of those. If you've been to New York City, you see them a lot. They're like these trucks with these electronic banners on them. And there's one that says New Hampshire, safe, prosperous, and free. What New York used to be. Yes, a direct shot at New York City. I love it. You know, this is one of the things I love. How much New Hampshire like hates the best states like in the country. Like, it's just like they hate Massachusetts so
Don't
much.
mess up New Hampshire.
Yeah, as like Mass is coming and pushing, it's like New Hampshire is literally turning into Mass because of all the work from home. It's like pushing New Hampshire out into Maine. And I just find it so funny that these are states that are doing things for, or trying to do things for their their population. And like, we don't want to be like them. Like, fuck the people. It's like such a weird, like, I don't know. It's so crazy.
Well, I want to be conscientious of time.
Yes.
Can we shift gears and talk?
Yeah, let's talk about
let's talk about the lawsuit.
the
John.
tea. Yeah.
Whenever you're
Okay.
ready, give us the primer
Sorry,
for anybody who's coming in. Yeah, take a minute. Go ahead.
Sorry, I'm just responding to Adam. Yeah, so I'll give you the short story about this lawsuit because it's kind of a hilarious. I think it's really funny. In 2023, right when I started running for governor, and I really did not exactly know what I was doing, one of my regulars at the restaurant was proposing to develop a apartment building right across the street, sort of across the street from me, and he was like, "Hey, I want you to go to this planning board meeting with the zoning board of adjustment and tell them why we need more workforce housing in New Hampshire." And I was like, "Yep, sure." And right before I went, I was like, "You know what? I'm just going to read through the Constitution of New Hampshire really quick to see if there's anything in there that might be something I could bring up," because it kept seeming so odd to me that you would have a group of people on a planning board who are generally homeowners who can say, we don't want any more apartment buildings or we don't want any more housing, which is then going to drive up their housing values. So they've kind of got this, situation where they can control the market and then can increase their own like wealth, which seems kind of crazy to me. So when I was looking through the Constitution, I stumbled upon Article 10, which I hope I've got here because I sure meant to.
As we all do, we
And
spend our evenings analyzing the Constitution of the state of New Hampshire, just perusing.
I grabbed the wrong paper. I'm going to pull it up really quick because Article 10 is a crucial, in my mind, is a crucial article that I think everyone should read it once, because I think once you do, it makes you think about the way that our state operates and the people who wrote the Constitution in a different way. So Article 10 says the government being instituted for the common benefit, protection, and security of the whole community, and not for the private interests or emolument of any one man, family, or class of men. Therefore, whenever the ends of government are perverted and public liberty manifestly endangered, and all other means of redress are ineffectual, the people may and of right ought to reform the old or establish a new government. The doctrine of non-resistance against arbitrary power and oppression is absurd, slavish, and destructive of the good and happiness of mankind. And that was later retitled, that was written in 1784, and was later retitled The Right of Revolution. And this article, basically what it's saying is that the government can't be operating in such a way that it benefits one group of people over another group of people. And so I put Article 10 into ChatGPT and I said, hey, explain this to me like I'm 5 years old. And it gave you the explanation I basically just said. It's the government has to work for every citizen. So it can't just work for homeowners. It has to work for renters too. It can't just work for homeowners. It has to work for the homeless too. And it has to serve all of these people equally. So I was like, wow, this is really interesting. And I put into ChatGPT, I said, how could you make an argument that Article 10 and the fact that New Hampshire state reps are only paid $100 a year is in conflict? And ChatGPT is like, sure. And it shot out, kind of an argument that you would make. That was very simple. I mean, it's not complicated to see how if only wealthy and retired people can serve in the legislature, they're not serving everyone. It's serving a specific class of people, that being homeowners and property owners and people that have money. And this is another thing people should understand about the New Hampshire legislature. Number one, we are the only state that does not pay its legislature at least like $10,000 per session. Number two, the legislature is 80% wealthy and retired people, and number three, like I said, they're only paid $100 a year. Like this is, to me, when I realized this, I was like, this is foundational. This is the issue in New Hampshire, because I wanted to run for a state rep. I've wanted to for years. I just could not afford to do that. And so once I realized that there was kind of an argument there that could be made, I spent all of my 2024 campaign talking about this a lot. The state reps need to get paid. If they were, a lot of the Democratic priorities would be easier, because I can't even go out as someone running for governor and try to recruit people and say, hey, let's run together and you can help me get my agenda passed. How can I do that in any moralistic way when they don't get paid? There's just such a small group of people that their schedule and their income allows them to do that. The pool is so small, and the number of working class people is very small. And not only is it small, but they get burnt out after 1 or 2 sessions. They end up like Jared Sullivan, like scooping ice cream, even though he's got like an economics degree. They end up doing these kind of weird jobs, like whatever they can do. And like frequently the employment is not, they're getting fired a lot. They're getting let go because the schedule doesn't work, or they're not able to go to Concord and do the job. And then they get DQ or housing or abortion funding. All of these things would be easier if we had a younger working class like legislature. Because I even think that the Republicans that are younger that I've talked to are more aligned with our issues on housing and cannabis and some of these other things than the older Republicans. Or even some of the younger Republicans are more aligned with the issues than some of the older Democrats, Not all of the issues, but some of them, and some of the more important ones, such as housing. So it really frustrated me because last term I was like, hey, if I push this, the Democrats will realize how important this issue is. And if we all focus on it and make a lot of noise, surely they cannot ignore all of us, And then the funny thing was that obviously did not happen. A lot of the Democrats are just convinced that nothing will change. The reps will never get paid. It's too hard to do it. They don't really understand the reason for it. They think it's fine. Well, I got elected. Why does it matter? Anyone can do this. A lot of them defend the system as opposed to critiquing it, especially when their schedule allows them to do the job. So the funny thing was about 6 months ago, and I went on ChatGPT and I said, hey, you were helping me with this thing about Article 10 and the state reps only get paid $100 a year. Is there anything that I can do as a non-lawyer to like further this, or like sue the government, or like, is there something I can do? Like, or could I hire a lawyer? Like, is there some mechanism? And it was so funny because it's just like, yep, RSA 491.22. And I'm like, why didn't I ask about that a year and a half ago? It just didn't occur to me. And it turns out there's this RSA 491.22 where basically any person can petition the government and say, hey, so mine it's called a petition for declaratory judgment. And I'm basically saying to the judges, I think this part of the Constitution does not work with this part. Tell me, make a decision. Tell me that I'm wrong, basically. And so once I realized I could do it, I sat on it for a little while and then was like, hey, I think this would be a good idea for the campaign. And one of the reasons that made me think that was I made a TikTok video where I said, hey, New Hampshire's not a democracy because rich people and retired people are basically make up the whole legislature. That's plutocracy ruled by the rich, or gerontocracy ruled by the elderly, but it's not democracy. So let's stop pretending, And I made that video and it blew up. I got the most likes, the most views I'd gotten on a New Hampshire video ever. And I was like, wow, this actually has legs in terms of like, this is an issue people will probably turn out for and will get people excited. So I was like, how can I amplify this? How can I get more people talking about it? And that was really the basis for the lawsuit. I think they're probably going to find some procedural grounds to throw it out. I'm going to appeal it. We'll go to the Supreme Court. And like, I just want a judge to look at this and tell me with a straight face, no, this is not, like, the fact that state reps don't get paid does not affect anything in New Hampshire. Like, tell me that. And this is kind of the crazy part, because if you read Article 10, it says that if we are asking the government to fix something and the government's broken, we are not just allowed, but we are literally obligated by the Constitution to replace the government. Like, it's a crazy law that they left in there. And I'm like, how has no one thought about Article 10 and how it could apply to like many issues in the state? And like, I'm not a lawyer, but I'm like, I know there's Democrats who are lawyers. Like, how has no one thought about using this to our advantage, especially when the Republicans claim to be the party of the Constitution, claim to be the ones that are like worshiping it, and they're not. They're wrong. They're violating the Constitution tons of ways all the time, and I think this is one of them.
I think it's so interesting, John, and I think a lot of us are glad you're doing this. It's bringing a lot of attention to something that obviously is so foundational to so many of the challenges that we're having in our state. And to your point, this is really a bipartisan issue, and it's been interesting to take a look at all the reactions, at least that are kind of coming in online. And this issue really does break that binary of like, left versus right thinking and really is sort of
Yeah.
uniting in the working class when people wrap their heads around this. And I think there's a lot of power in that idea in New Hampshire, especially, where if we can push this working class message above the message of Democrats versus Republicans, I see a lot of like promise there. So when you're thinking about this and you decided to move forward with this, can you lay out like what's the best case scenario in your mind coming out of this? Is it really is it sort of just pushing the issue to get the judge to sort of say on the record that this is not acceptable? What's your kind of what's the best case scenario outcome here?
I'm really curious as to what will happen and how it will work. No one has tried to do this before, as far as I could find in my research. So I think it'll be interesting. I mean, I just literally want to be in a room with someone who's, you know, legal authority and say, like, make this make sense, make it make sense. And they can't. There's no way that they can make it make sense. And it's just is one of those ways where, like, we've reached this kind of absurd level with a document that was written 200 plus years ago, where they're picking which parts of it still apply and then saying these other parts don't apply. And it's just absurd. I mean, I was talking to the people in my food pantry. I said, hey, let's make soup, and I'll start giving out soup, you know, with the food at the food pantry, or like a soup kitchen, but maybe just to go, because, you know, it would be easier. And they're like, well, we got to check the laws. We don't know if we can just make soup and give it away to go. And they're probably right. We probably legally aren't allowed to do that. But it's like, we're at this point where the government is ceasing to function in a way that helps a whole, like, most people. And at that point, you know, what are we supposed to do when we continue to work the same, you know, the legal avenues, and there's no recourse? I mean, one thing people should understand is we have a federal constitutional right to a redress of grievances, right? You have the right to ask the government at any time to address your problems, and they have to respond. And it's just, I think we've gotten, and this is me too, we have gotten lazy with our politics and with, you know, our knowledge of the Constitution, and we're relying on people to sort of interpret these things for us in a way that is not always accurate and benefits them and not us. And that's where I think ChatGPT and AI, when it comes to the law, is going to be a democratizing agent, in the sense that we have access to all of this information that before was guarded by a law degree. And now, if I can go in there and say, hey, tell me what this part of the Constitution means, how can I leverage this for my campaign for fighting for the working class? And literally ChatGPT will be like, I'll write that up for you right now, you know, and like, let's do the research. Where, you know, like, let's find it out. And so I think that we can really use that tool to get into places that were gate kept, you know, that were gate kept by lawyers, frankly, and by politicians.
Oh, put it on the spot here. No, I think these are great points, and ChatGPT and AI in general, I think, is like a really interesting topic, and I think it is also even more interesting when you attach it to the environment, right? Which is like something that you think is important too. And I know right now the big drawback for AI is environmental costs, right? And on top of that, there's the regenerative AI is using more than we could possibly provide it in terms of energy. And I know if I'm sure, yeah, I don't want to like take for granted what people know about AI, but what AI is capable of right now into today, if we had the power, if we had the sheer like energy to power it, we can't even fathom what it's capable of today in 2025. Yeah. And I sometimes wonder, like, if a path, or if this is something that you could foresee New Hampshire being on the front line of when it comes to green energy, right? And sustainable energy, and how it's been marketed in the past has always been kind of like a moral thing, right? And I think that's difficult for a lot of working class people. It's not that they don't care, it's that they're too poor to care, really. It's like they're working, they're putting food on their table, they can't, you know, even recycling, I feel like it's coming out that was like a PR program for us, right? Like what we're doing in recycling, it helps, but compared to what these corporations are doing, it's not even close. And I feel like the moral aspect of it is no good, is in terms of selling it. But what do you think about selling it as? Yeah. what do you think about selling it as a tool to power AI? Like, and I just feel like that's not something that, I mean, it's the profit motive of it in rare cases might be the reason why we see ourselves in a greener world, is because we need the power. We don't have enough oil and coal to like power AI. We do need wind and sun. So I don't know if you've thought about that at all, the connection there.
Well, I haven't thought about that exactly, but I think that is a really good argument. And I think going to the basis of your comment, which is that the Democrats need to stop making moralistic arguments and start making economic arguments. And even for the environment, that makes sense. Like, it makes more sense to have solar panels on every school building because it would save our schools money than because it's better than fossil fuels. Although both are equally good arguments, but the average less informed voter is going to hear, okay, so my property taxes are going to go down if we install solar panels and the power bill goes down. Great. You know what I mean? Like, that's the argument. And this is the thing that the Democrats got to get better on, is every argument has got an economic aspect to it. Like, we should compost because composting pulls food out of the waste stream. The waste stream costs your city or town a ton of money. That is an economic argument that also has an environmental angle. You know, we should house homeless people, not because it's a moralistic thing, a morally good thing to do. While it is, we should do it because it's more expensive to have people living on the streets, going to the ER, you know, having the fire department, the police go and have to deal with them. And then we don't get to use our parks because homeless people are living there. And they should be housed because it's cheaper. You know, it's like, it's cost effective. Like, that's the argument to be making. And with the Republicans, it's like right now, especially in New Hampshire, the argument I'm making is we have been cutting taxes to the point where it costs us more to run the government than it would if we just raised taxes a little bit. And what I'm talking about there is the YDC lawsuits specifically. You know, we're spending close to $500 million paying out these lawsuits for these kids that were horribly treated under state custody, when if we had spent a few $1 million 10 or 20 years ago on oversight and proper, YDC leadership, we wouldn't be in this problem. So there's like always a conservative or an economically conservative angle on every issue. You just got to find it. And that's what I think the Democrats are not good at, is like, we make self-serving arguments all the time. You know, you should vote. Like, this is like, I heard this a lot last time. And I would tell people, hey, I don't know if the young people are going to vote for Trump because they're not going to vote for Kamala because they're upset about Gaza. And these old folks they just have to. Well, how can they not vote for Kamala? Trump's going to destroy the world. How can they not? And I said, because she won't say that she's against genocide. And that to some people is very important, you know, but like they just assume everyone is going to agree with their arguments and agree with these self-serving talking points. And it's like, why are we trying to convince Democrats to vote for Democrats? We should be trying to get independents and even Republicans to vote for Democrats. And what's that argument look like? Because it's not the same argument. And I know it because I've been in these rooms where they just say the line, we got to fight for abortion. We got to fight for LGBTQ. Okay, how? How are we going to do that if we don't have any power? How are we going to do that if we lose election after election after election when, you know, you guys don't want to talk about the one thing that would help us, which is taxing the rich, you know, and investing in schools and affordable housing. But all of these things require taxing the wealthy, which, you know, both parties are kind of making it very hard to do.
It's part of the pattern of like Democrats just are not nailing the message at all. And we cannot seem to find any of these unifying messages, and fighting against Trump is not a message that wins alone, right? You need to have more substance about it. Ari and I were talking about Zohran's campaign and how he uses the word affordability in almost every single answer, right? Like, if they ask him about APAC, it comes back to affordability, right? He has a way of not skirting questions, but ultimately connecting everything back. And so ultimately it's a messaging exercise, right? Like, not to like geek out, but like at the end of the day, it's really like, what are we trying to help people wrap their heads around, right? What are we trying to, what dots are we trying to connect for people? And if we can all align a little bit more on like, what are those working class messages, we will have a lot more success.
Yeah, I mean, that's where my campaign's trying to use this term, not trying to, we're using this term, community first economics, and we're focusing in a very practical way on housing, property taxes, and education funding. And the education piece is really important. Like, the cause of most of our, or almost all of our problems, is inequality. And one really good way to fight inequality is to invest in education. And when you do that, you lift everyone up. Like a company wanting to move here isn't going to move here if people aren't well educated. If there aren't graduates from UNH with advanced degrees that companies want to hire, they're not going to come here. And it helps the business community if people are paying less money for rent or mortgage, because then they have more money to spend at local businesses, or at even bigger businesses. Like, having people spend 60-70% of their income on housing is bad for the economy. It's bad for people's mental health as well, but it's also very bad for the economy to have all this money tied up in landlords. Like, it doesn't make any sense. To have Jeff Bezos have billions of dollars, it doesn't make economic sense. If he was to pay all of his employees as much as he could, let's say it was 30-40 bucks an hour, that would be so much money floating around in our local economy. Like, the local driver for Amazon would now be making thousands of dollars a week. He could buy more burgers at my shop. He could go down to Crack Skulls and buy more coffee. He could go to Stone Church and watch more shows. So I wasn't sure if I was going to bring this up today, but I have got it's not quite for sale yet, but I've written a book. It's called Community First Economics, and basically I took everything that I had researched over the last 2 years, and I was like, let's put this into like a very basic set of first explaining what the problems are, housing, inequality, that sort of stuff, and then and education funding, and then some very basic solutions, like not complicated stuff, just little things like literally funding education in a way that is progressive and not regressive. This is like the first copy that this was like the edit, or not the edit, but this still has some errors in it, so it's not quite for sale yet, because I've got to order another copy, do some edits. This is the process of writing a book, but it's super short. It's like 100 pages. I wrote it so that anyone could read it in like an hour and a half. And the idea is that, and this book, like, the intention is that it will be continuously changing, in the idea that someone will say, hey, I just thought of something that should be in a part of Community First Economics, and it would be like a growing like group of ideas of just like some sort of vision for the future. Because I looked at Trump, and they've got Project 2025. Like, what's our response? What has been the response for Project 2025? I have not heard anything. And so I was like, hey, I guess I got to write it. Like, that's fine. I'll do what I got to do. And like, I would be fine if this was 100% different in 2 years. If people said, hey, every idea you had in there is terrible, that's fine. Like we just need to have a starting talking point about like, what do we believe in, and how does the economy work for us? And the thing people got to understand is we have been living under trickle-down economics, Reaganomics, for the last 42 years, my whole life, since 1980, since Reagan first implemented that, which meant cut taxes for the rich, cut taxes for the wealthy, the money will come trickling down. It never did. It was a recipe for extreme inequality. And people need to understand the levels of inequality in the United States and in New Hampshire are not sustainable. Historically, it leads to revolution, civil war, and just chaos. But there is a way you can stop that, and the United States did it in the 1930s with FDR.
But he is going to talk about the Green New Deal.
The Republicans and some of the Democrats seem to completely not understand this moment in history. Like, this is not a status quo return moment. This is like radical change so that people don't burn the system down. Because as fun as that might sound for some of you, what comes after burning down the system might in fact be much worse. You know what I mean? There's been many revolutions, like in Iran, that ended with not the outcome that some of the people involved thought that they were going to get. So as much as like that can sound exciting, the revolution might end up with a dictator, and in fact, in some ways, MAGA is trying to do their own revolution in many ways, and the outcome that they want from their revolution, many of them think of it as revolutionary, what's happening with MAGA and Trump. The outcome is not good. It's very bad. So that's kind of
I'm going to hand it back to Aria, but I did just want to say, John, I appreciate that you are, one of the things I appreciate about the campaign that you're running is that you're thinking outside of the box and you are kind of like addressing head on the reality of the situation where we are barreling towards some kind of a revolution, right? And so why don't we put up some idea? Like I want to see more leaders on the left putting out ideas. So like hell yeah, publish a book. That's awesome. I think that's great. Like sue the state, get these things, get these topics as dinner table conversations, right? Because that way we can start to envision what comes next. And I think painting that picture for people is incredibly important. That's why this is great that we're seeing Zohran winning. Like all these things help people paint the picture and visualize what that better future could look like, and understand that what we're talking about isn't so crazy and unrealistic. Aria, do you want to talk about this graph that you pulled up?
Yeah. I mean, I think part of this is I mean, talking about messaging, right? And I think Democrats and liberals in general have been some of the worst messengers on earth, especially over the last like 20 years. I think they don't sell their greatest plans. They don't sell their greatest achievements well. They usually end up having to run from them because Republicans have just created this environment, this kind of structure of media that can just hone in. They've mastered messaging, right? Like they've mastered messaging. I mean, when you look at things like, when they make whatever the new, crazy thing is, which is like CRT or like going woke, and they're really good at moving as an organism, right? And one of the things we're really lacking in America is like media literacy and like kind of like it's basic understanding like of a million versus a billion, right? And it might not sound like a lot, but I've seen videos where people kind of like, they're using this as an example to explain really what there's a major difference between a millionaire and a billionaire, right? Like you in your brain, it doesn't seem that big, but when you compare it as like rice pellets or as time, for those of you that are not on Twitch and just on TikTok, let me tell you guys, 1,000,000 seconds is 11 and a half days, but 1,000,000,000 seconds is almost 32 years. Okay. So there is a massive, massive difference between these. And I think like sometimes I see people talking about billionaires as if they're like, regular old people that are like, they made some good decisions and like they got like maybe one or two businesses, like a little chain somewhere in New Hampshire. And these guys are these are a very rare class of people that have a ton of capital. And that capital is, and just to, again, talking about revolutions, let them eat cake. This is the closest moment to the French Revolution I have ever seen. I'm a student of history, okay? I'm a nerd, okay? I read this stuff like it's like, like it's going out of style. And the wealth inequality during the revolution, French Revolution, was not as bad as it is right now. And during that revolution, people were pulling billionaires out of their houses in this town square with the, the big dropping, what is that, a guillotine or whatever? It became like a symbol of the revolution, right? They didn't have guns back then, mind you, so like it is like this tinderbox, I feel like, that we're sitting on, that is, and it's being pressured by obviously one party. It's like, removing SNAP, removing Medicaid, adding that money to like a domestic force. And the most major, what you touched on, Iran, obviously I am Iranian. My dad and I, we have these questions. We talk about the revolution all the time, because the people in Iran, and it sounds like you're well versed in history, they were very upset with the Shah, right? Like they thought the Shah, the king at the time, he was the monarch in Iran, right? It was up until the 70s. It was an authoritarian monarchy, but it wasn't as bad as the current regime. It was still silencing media, it wasn't totally free, but it was an ally of America as well. So it was supported by America. And people got so upset with the Shah, they got so angry that they kicked him out without ever having discussions about what was coming next. And they let something much worse in. And John, you make a perfect point here that I talked to Marissa about, that like we are so caught up in removing Trump, right? All of us, we're so caught up in it. It's just, it's like a buckshot approach that Trump has. And I feel like that we are not having enough conversations about what we want to come next. Like there are people out there that want straight up vengeance against the right? And like those people, we need to make sure that we are having conversations about those people, because we don't want to fall into the same kind of like dictatorship, authoritarian view of society as a reconciliation, right? And I feel like we're not having enough conversations about that. We're talking about how bad it is right now, but ICE, I mean, I think something we can all agree to right now is that it's never going to be the same again. Like there is no going back to something, right? Like whatever the future looks like is either going to be much worse or much better, and we are the ones that get to decide what that looks like.
Amen.
Hey, John, I want to circle back to the lawsuit when we wrap up, but I want to ask as well,
Sure,
somebody
yeah.
in the comments. Somebody in the comments was asking, do you think that anyone could ever run a Mamdani-esque campaign in New Hampshire and be successful? I'm curious what your thoughts
I
are on
think
that.
it's really I think it's important to just, the demographics of New York City are obviously wildly different than New Hampshire. So I think it's really not about I think we just got to be careful. Like you use the term socialism, and I feel like in New Hampshire that's like poison. As same with the term libertarian. Like, because at one point I was like, "Hey, I'm kind of a libertarian socialist," and my campaign was like, "Dude,
I got a
you
word.
can't
I got a
use
word.
either one of those words."
Populist.
Yeah,
What do you think about populist, John? I
yeah.
want to hear your thoughts on populist.
I, no, I think that's a good term. I mean, I think that's why I like the term just community, because it's like, what am I trying to build? Like, I'm trying to help my local community at the crux of it. And like, I look at the government, the governor's role, and even the state, the reps and the Senate. Like, their job or our job should be helping towns and cities thrive. It shouldn't be like this top-down mandate, but it should also be like a cooperative. Like, the government should be in cooperation with the people at all times. So I think it's just really important for us to realize that, like, I don't think Mamdani, like if he ran in New Hampshire for governor, I don't know that he would win. But I think the lessons are, be idealistic with what you're talking about on the campaign trail. Like he's saying things like free buses and free healthcare, or free childcare, which maybe he gets it, maybe he doesn't, but maybe like instead of free childcare, it's extremely subsidized childcare. It's saying to the people like, hey, if I had full control over the legislature, like this is what I would give you. And like obviously there's going to be the meat grinder of making actual legislation, and whatever you end up with is never what you want necessarily, because we just have compromise. But at least establishing like, hey, I'm a Democrat and I believe everyone should have housing. Children at school should be fed. There should be no one going hungry. Like, we can't have people living outside that that need and want housing. Like, just some basic things. Like, people shouldn't go bankrupt because they got cancer. Like, just some very basic ideals. And if you can't say those things, like, what is the Democratic Party if it's not like, I want, to me, it's like, I want a minimal amount of housing and food and healthcare available to everyone at all times, regardless of how much it costs billionaires. And we can debate what that includes and how the best ways to get to it, because there are been for instance, you can't just house homeless people. They might need social workers, they might need nurses, like they might have disabilities, they might have trauma from living on the street for years. So it's not just housing, it's our solutions must be informed by our experience and by what we have learned so far. I mean, you look at California, they put billions of dollars towards homelessness and didn't get a lot of results. So I guess what I'm saying is, like, we need to be practical about how we approach problems, but also idealistic when we're running campaigns.
Someone in the comments says, so basic level human rights. Like, yeah, exactly. We're
Yes.
talking. That's why anytime anyone's like,
Go
well, I don't
figure.
agree with the radical left, I am like, I need you to define what that means for me. Define what radical left means, because we're literally just talking about treating each other with human dignity. That's it.
Or when they say both sides
I'm
are really
curious.
extreme, like, which is like, oh, yeah, I'm extreme. I want you to get healthcare. Sorry, like, let me be more
Yeah,
extreme.
sorry, I'm such
Yeah.
an insane extremist. In terms of reactions to this lawsuit and what you've been doing, John, can you share a little bit about, there's been a lot of news coverage, there's been a lot of conversation, anything that surprised you, anything that you want to like clarify, any thoughts
Well,
on how that's been perceived?
I've been fairly disappointed by some of the Democrat reaction. I don't know if you read the Seacoast Media Group Portsmouth Herald article, but you know, the idea that Democrats would like, and you should know, there are state reps on food stamps right now. I've talked to them. They're on SNAP benefits. They cannot afford to buy food. And to think that there's Democrats that would go to Concord and you would have people that you're sitting with who are on food stamps, and you think paying them is not an important priority. You think paying them is a distraction. I find that very troubling, because if they're not willing to fight for their own colleagues in the state house to be paid so that they don't have to get food stamps, how much faith can we have that they're going to fight for anyone else for a minimum wage or a living wage or housing or any of these other issues, when clearly they're saying, oh, I'm fine, and if I'm fine, I don't see what the problem is. And that's really the problem with the Democratic leadership in general, is they just are unwilling to analyze their own point of privilege and say, oh, maybe, not everyone can do this job because whatever, my, wife pays all the bills so I can go to Concord, or my dad pays all the bills because I still live with my parents, or I, whatever it is, or I'm wealthy and I'm retired. And, I had a guy call me up and he said, this is a state rep who's, he's retired, but he's not wealthy. He's a Democrat. And he said, look, I'm trying to tell people that you're a serious candidate, but then you're making these lawsuits that are just, it doesn't make any sense. Look, we already tried that. Now, mind you, this guy's been a state rep for decades, right? And he's telling me, oh, we already tried everything to get state reps paid. We couldn't do it. And it's like, oh, this is a really good argument for term limits, because when you've tried a bunch of things and you think that you haven't succeeded, that's why you want young people to go, hey, I don't think you tried 491:22. You didn't try that one. You haven't tried everything. And the fact that you guys are, it's like that whole adage, like, oh, we tried one thing and nothing's, and it hasn't worked. It's like, it just is, at a certain point, I just don't know that they want us in their party. That is my problem. And I had this problem last time I ran, and it's like it was ZOHRAN and the fact that they did not call out Cuomo. I'm like, hey, at a certain point, Democrats leadership, those of us like me are asking ourselves, why are we going to keep showing up for you? And it doesn't mean I'm going to bow out of politics. It's going to mean like I was going to do in the beginning of this campaign when I was running as an independent for my own political party, because if they're not willing to let us play ball or are going to degrade the basic idea of like, at what point is enough enough? And like, I don't think that they've thought this through at all. Because I thought that having me run as an independent, and they would do the calculation and go, okay, if Kuiper's an independent for governor, that means we not only have to beat the Republicans, but we have to beat the let's say I'm running as a progressive. Then they would have to beat me plus the Republicans. There's no way that they could do that. It would never happen. I might not win, but they would never win. And what would happen is I think I would slowly gain more and more support until I did win. And this is something that the Democratic leadership needs to recognize. Yes, the United States has only ever had two political parties, but those political parties have changed because one of them became irrelevant over time. And if the Democrats want to be Republican light, they will find themselves irrelevant in 10 years, and a new party will take their place. It won't be that there will be three parties. It's that the Democratic Party will be destroyed by their own desire to maintain the status quo over everything else. And I'm just saying, like, hey, I'm 42. I can be around for the next 40 years running for governor anyway, or maybe 20. I don't want to do that, but like, they've got to recognize that they could very well be seeing the sowing the seeds of their own destruction if they don't embrace outsiders like myself, like ZOHRAN, like Bernie, like our friend Graham Plattner in Maine. It's like, if you keep trying to screw us with these rich candidates in the primaries, like at a certain point, we're just going to say, hey, let's pull a Cuomo. I'll just run in the general. I don't need you guys. I'll just skip the primary. I'll run as an independent Democrat. So I don't know that they're not thinking about this in a bigger perspective. Like, I had hoped, again, like I said, that running as an independent, they would do the math and go, hey, we'd be better off with KIPER on our side than against us. But I don't think that they get that. I don't think that I don't know that they care,
I want to respond to something that you said. I completely agree with a lot of that. I want to respond to something that you said that a lot of people in the comments reacted to, which was that they don't want us in their party, right? I think a lot of people can kind of include themselves in this bucket of people who feel disenfranchised by the Democratic Party. And people in the comments are like, I don't give a fuck if they don't want us in the party. Like, I think, I don't think, and I'm going to just talk about myself for a moment. I don't think people realize what's happening. New Hampshire is a very small state, and there are a lot of individuals here that are being activated for the first time. And they are being
Yeah.
activated on behalf of working class policies and US local community first policies. They don't want their money going to bombs. They don't want their money going
Yeah.
to overseas. They don't want this type of establishment representation. I started my year with 7,000 TikTok followers. When I started talking
Wow.
about this
Really?
stuff on social media, 7,000. I was posting mom content, weed content. I was in a totally different ball game, okay? And now I have 37,000 followers. I've got almost 15,000 on Instagram, and that's not counting all the podcast platforms and things like that. So these are people that largely have gravitated to my account because I am talking about leftist politics in New Hampshire.
Yeah.
I see those people turn up at events. I see those people, I hear from those people directly that they are participating for the first time. Bridget's in here, like Bridget's on the, like all over the place in Dover politics now. Like all of these people that we've gotten to know, they're not just participating online, they're being activated in real life in a big way. And we have this
Yeah.
community now. I was looking the other day, we have almost 2,000 posts under NH Talk. And NH
Yeah.
Talk is specifically people talking about these progressive working class policies. So we're going to take, I don't care if they don't want us there, right? We're
Yeah.
here now and we're not going anywhere. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I think, and this is one of the reasons I came back to the Democratic Party was honestly just that they have the infrastructure of the town and county meetings, which is really powerful. And the at the end of the day, I think you and I and Aria would align with the average person showing up at a Democrat meeting more than we would agree with the leadership, or that they would agree with the leadership. A lot of these people are just like looking for a fight. Like they want to be in the fight, they want to do the good thing, but like their only sort of flaw is that when the DNC says, "Hey, Joe Biden is totally fine to run for president," they go, "Okay, Joe Biden." They say Joe Biden's fine; he's good for a second term. We'll just take that, you know. And we all kind of like for a little while we're like, "Yeah, okay, I guess so." And this is kind of the one problem is there's not enough. There's a lot of reluctance to critique the party, and and when you can't take criticism, you know, and there's no accountability because they lose elections and they just are like, oh, well, whatever. We don't need to change leadership. We don't need to change messaging. We're just going to become more Republican. It's like, you know, at a certain point, you just got to wonder if they like literally, and like, I'm joking when I say this, but there are times when the claim that the Democrats are controlled opposition, I'm like, is this true? Like the APEC money being a good example. Like, how hard would it be for Chris Pappas to give back the $500,000 he got and just say, hey, I'm going to do this election with 4.5 million instead of a solid 5 million, and then he would gain tens of thousands of voters. Like so many people would go, Chris Pappas, thank you for giving back that money. I'm back on. Like I think Karishma might drop out. Like, you know what I mean? Like if that, I mean, probably not, but you know what I'm saying? But like, if she even made that her goal, and I've told her before, I'm like, hey, if you get on the debate stage, make sure you just, you know, obviously she knows this, but like that would be crazy. But the fact that that's not even really something that I think is probably even considered, you know, he's even considering is frustrating.
Somebody in the comments says it's like the parties are two wings on the same bird, and I would like to add that they're the same wings on the same chicken tender. I don't know. There's a joke there about Chris Pappas and tenders. Somebody can find it in the comments for me.
No, but John,
no,
sorry, no, I just wanted to say John is just he nailed he hit the nail on the head here when it comes to this progressive versus liberal kind of battle lines that have been occurring for a long time now. And again, they use the strategy of we don't have anything to excite you to get to the polls. be scared of what's coming. They've used that tool so long, and they're still using that same tool right now on various candidates. I mean, they did it to Zohran all the way up until the end. They're doing it to Graham Plattner now, and people are showing that they don't care about that shit. And you're spot on here. They're reacting. Like, what made Graham Plattner popular? It wasn't his skin tone or like what he does for a job. It was the things that he was saying, the things that are like working for working class people. And I feel like there is this, when we used to talk about like, these are online leftists, people used to say that, but now it feels like, again, when you look at the polling, you're talking like 70 to 80% of the Democratic Party now is responding to these policies and responding to these leftist policies. And I think you nailed it right there, that the Democratic Party, they strike me, John, seriously, and I don't know how you feel about this, but they strike me as complicit almost. Like, it's like you guys are so feckless right now. You guys lack teeth so much that it almost feels like you're okay with what's happening. Like you maybe are using this as a campaign tool to be like, look how bad it got, and to me, it's just like, overnight, it feels like Zohran became the face of the Democratic Party, the insurgent left, right? Like, and everyone else just ceded that responsibility. Now, the Democratic Party this next year is gonna go through some identity issues here. We're gonna have real conversations, I think, with the establishment, what this party is gonna look like in the upcoming few years, because there's not enough contrast right now. Again, not saying like not the culture war stuff, which is you got brown shirts and no brown shirts. I get it, but when it comes to how they vote policy wise, like where they get their money from, the corporatist attitude, I think it's hard to separate them. And I agree with the chatter, what they said.
I think one thing to keep in mind is like, there's this tendency to conflate all of the issues that progressives support as being like far left, and one of the things that the Republicans have done very well is weaponizing, abortion, for instance, where they know that they can get their people out. Like I heard about this, Steve Bannon, they would go to states where they knew they couldn't get an abortion ban through, but they would put it on the ballot anyway, just to rev up the base and get a bunch of people knocking doors and saying, hey, do you want to sign up for this abortion ban? Even though they knew there was no chance it would get through. But it was like galvanizing the base. It was getting everybody on board. No one cared about abortion before like the 70s. Like, it was not a Christian issue. It was not something that the Republicans were heavily like concerned about. And they picked this, not out of a bucket, not random, but, because they knew that it would be a way to get their people excited. And I think the Democrats sometimes fail to find those issues. I mean, Zohran did it. He did it because he found these issues that are, bipartisan. I mean, everyone, whether or not you're Republican or Democrat, wants the buses to be, on time, and wants the buses running on time, and wants, affordable housing. Like, there's Republicans and Democrats whose kids can't move out. I hear this a lot from parents who are like, yeah, my 25-year-old's like living at my house still, and I would love for them to be able to move out. I know that they can't. And even sometimes it'll be like, oh, my 25-year-old, my 28-year-old, my 32-year-old, and their 5 kids are all living with me, and these are Republicans and Democrats that are worried about these issues, which I think is like one big thing that the Democrats have got to learn. And I hope Zohran taught this lesson is we've got to campaign on 3 issues. You get more than 3 issues and you get lost in the conversation. And Zohran killed it with that messaging. And the thing is, we campaign on 3 issues, but we govern on 1,000 issues. You know what I mean? Like, there's this kind of attitude right now where if you're not saying abortion every time you're campaigning, that means you don't care about women's health. And I think nothing could be further from the truth for me. I had a woman call me out about this the other day, and I said, hey, I'm running on housing costs, lowering property taxes, which lead to housing costs, and education funding, which leads to property taxes and housing costs, and these 3 issues are really important. They're bipartisan. They will get independents out. Housing is a big deal for everybody, blah, blah. And she said, I can't believe one of your 3 talking points isn't women's health. And I was like, well, that's an important issue, but the reality is it's not as important for the independent voters that we need to win. Like, we have to be a little bit calculated about how we do this. And if you look, like, there was a polling done in New Hampshire, and it was like, what are your biggest issues? And it was like housing, education, property taxes, democracy, and abortion was very low down on the list, because if someone is getting evicted from their house, they're working 2 jobs just to barely stay afloat. They're not seeing their kid because their kid's in daycare because they're working so much. Abortion is just not the top of mind issue that that I think like some Democrats think it is. And I'm just using that as an example, but just thinking like more broadly about how we appeal to people and how we bring them into the fold. And clearly Zohran has showed a recipe for that.
I love this conversation about messaging. I find it very interesting. And I think, to your point about the conversation around abortion, it's when everything's on fire, we still have to prioritize when it comes to messaging, right? Like, I don't think
Yeah.
I'm certainly not hearing, at least what I'm not hearing from you is, I'm not hearing you say this wouldn't be a priority for me if I was governor. I'm not hearing you say I would not care about this or this would not be sort of at the top of my list. You're saying as a campaign, it's not in my top 3 messages that I'm trying to get out to mobilize voters. And I think that that's nuance that not everybody can hear. And I think that we all need to practice hearing nuance because I agree with that. I think it's like it's not a top issue for most people. That's what the data says. So why would you be leading with that messaging? That said, it's still important messaging. I'm still hearing you talk about this as an important campaign issue for you. I think those things can all be true at the same time. So, John, we had told you we'd keep you for 30 minutes to an hour. It's now been almost an hour and a half. So I wanted to give you the opportunity to, any last things you want to plug? I know you've got an event coming up this weekend. Anything else you want to share with folks?
November 9th, if you're in the Newmarket area at the Rockingham Ballroom, come down. Everyone's invited, free event. Recently elected state rep Billy Butler will be performing with her band, the Bitter Pills. If you've never seen them play, they're really fun. Really kind of a kooky, eccentric band, which if you've ever met Billy makes a lot of sense. And we're making some chili, so feel free to come. Even if you want to just eat my free chili, that's totally fine. If you completely disagree with me on politics. And it's going to be a good time. Marissa's going to be there. I don't know if Aria, I don't know if you're coming.
I plan on being there. Absolutely. I plan on being there for sure. I'm excited. Yeah.
Sweet. I think it'll be really, really cool to get a lot of people that meet in online spaces in real life. And I think that's a very important thing. And Marissa, I want to thank you for the, hosting your live podcast recordings, because it's just great to meet people and be like, oh, hey, I recognize you from your profile photo and you're actually a real human. And like, we can do things in real life that are going to affect change. And I think it's also important for people out there to realize, like, it's very easy to get on social media, post some videos and think that you've done your job. And that is important. And social media is a very good tool for getting the message out, but you have to do the other part, which is voting. You know what I mean? You got to vote, and you got to vote in primaries, particularly. Like, primaries is where we define the party, and a lot of people I don't think understand that. That was a frustrating thing I had in 2024, was that people didn't want to get behind me because they're like, oh, you're not going to win. And I'm like, well, that's not really relevant. If I do really well, let's say I get 30% of the vote and no one saw that coming, they're going to say, okay, his priorities should be lifted up because clearly people want those priorities to be an issue. So I think that's just important. Vote, know who you're voting for, vote locally too, like state, your town and county or your town city boards are really important. If you've got time, serve on them. I learned everything I know about New Hampshire politics from the seat of the town council and the ZBA and these other boards. And that's really where a lot of the power in New Hampshire lies. We have local control. So you can learn so much being on a town council or city council. And also I should probably say, congratulations to everyone in New Hampshire, Democrats who won a race last night. There was a bunch of wins all over the state. This bodes really well for me. It bodes well for our party. And I think things are looking up. But again, we don't want to vote on Orange Man bad. It's got to be new ideas, which is why I wrote this book. There'll be more copies available soon once the editing process is done. But I think that's it. Thank you guys for having me. It's been great.
Cool. Thank you for being here, John, and sharing your time with us. I appreciate it. Yeah, Aria and I will both be at the event this weekend. And well, Aria might be, so we'll see. 50-50.
Yeah, I'm gonna be there for sure.
It's like a half committal answer, but I'll be there. I'm excited. I love meeting folks. To your point, I love meeting folks from this experience in real life. So let's all be together in community, lift up these ideas. Let's support these ideas and help get some popularity around what we're talking about here. So thanks for what you're doing, John. Thanks for being here.
VoteKuiper.org. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, John.
Bye.
Bye.
We'll give John a second to actually like complete the act of you got to close out from here. It's a whole production.
Absolutely. And yeah,
How are you doing, Arya?
I'm good. I'm good.
You still want to go for a few minutes?
Yeah, absolutely. Why not? We talk a little bit about talk more about like some of the details of the election, and I don't know. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, that sounds good. Do you in the comments, is Arya quiet for anybody else? Arya is really quiet for me right now.
Yeah, am I quiet for
But
people?
that was nice. I always like talking to John Kuiper. He's thinking about things in a different way, and I appreciate that because I think that we have to be doing that right now. It's too much business as usual.
Yeah, I mean, John is a very unique guy. I like him. I like him a lot. I mean, like as a person, as a dude, like, some guy I could hang out with, watch a game with, I'm sure. And whenever I see him at an event, it's natural. I just feel like he's the type of guy that the governor races are a little bit different than like the other statewide races, right? I mean, you have kind of like a national and a local audience when you're running for like senator or like Congress. But when you're running for governor, you're running for the president to be the president of that state, right? Like you're running as the head executive of that state. And I think there's a little bit different, like the knowledge bank and like the kind of the platforms are a little bit different. He's a little bit more in the weeds, I think. And when I see someone like that, a working class guy, normal guy around my age coming from the left as a progressive, I just feel like he's the prototype, I think, of the type of candidate that we're talking about, right? And obviously we want more women, we want more people of color. But when you talk about someone that has connections to the community, has felt the grind of running a small business, the food and drink industry, which is like cutthroat industry in this country, especially since COVID made things really difficult. And he's just full of knowledge. And that's what I really appreciate about him is that like it's obvious that it's not just a campaign for him, like he cares about this stuff and he's imperfect. I'm sure, there are things like he's not chiseled the way he's not media chiseled the way like, Kelly Ayotte is or like, but that's why we want to vote for him. Right. I mean, I feel like that value that metric, that kind of value bank we put on like the chiseled, like the Gavin Newsom's aesthetic might work against them come 2028. Seriously. I mean, like the kind of like presidential looking, good looking guy from California.
Just slick.
Yeah. And he's rounding up homeless people in his own state. Right. And he's going on bro podcasts and pretending like he doesn't know what APAC is. Like you're going to start like looking at that aesthetic as like gross. You're like, I want John Kuiper over, like Gavin Newsom. And that's what that value is like what we look at as important to these people is changing right before our eyes. I don't know if you sense that too.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm laughing. Pat's in the Twitch chat saying Kuiper is willing to show up at random places on a whim to meet people. Doubtful Ayotte would show up to a One Quick Thing pod. Hey, let me formally invite Kelly Ayotte if you'd like to come to a One Quick Thing podcast. We have a last Tuesday of the month. Would love to ask you some questions. I have actually a lot of questions. So if you'd like to come, you are welcome. Pappas is my white whale, right? Like I would love to have, I would really... that like more than Ayotte, I just have a personal vendetta and I would love to just have some conversations with him.
It's the chicken tenders, admit it. Just admit it.
I just can't do it. I can't do it. But yeah, so I think it's nice to chat with him. We'll be at the event. I'm looking forward to meeting some of y'all and seeing some of you guys in person. I need to wipe my socials history to get him. Yeah, I'm gonna leave that there. Actually, I'm gonna just not touch that. I was gonna go down there, but yeah. So what else? Moving away from Kuiper, obviously we saw a lot of good Dem wins last night in New Hampshire, but I think this was a big. Obviously, I think you and I are both feeling pretty lit up about the ZOHRAN stuff because I just feel like this is a moment. We've been talking about this a lot, but I feel like people are going to be able to see these policies, start believing that these things can be real and not just sort of fantasy, right? When we talk about affordable childcare and public transit that works and is free. And these are ideas that in America, we have been told that that is not possible. And we have been like hit with the propaganda that these things are a fantasy, but they're not. And I think that there's great power in that. And I think there's great power in starting to remove the stigma of the word socialist in politics, right? Like we're starting to see people talk about these things that have been considered a little bit fringe in the past and are now starting to become mainstream. And I think that I personally am of the opinion that once that illusion starts to break for people, this sort of lie that we've been told by capitalism that everything has to be hard, once we start to break that illusion and realize if we just tax billionaires appropriately, we can all have what we need to have a happy, successful, fruitful life. I think that that ball can go downhill really fast. I don't know what really fast means exactly, but that's what's kind of giving me hope in the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of what you're talking about again is like messaging, right? It's like, again, just being able to message correctly and message or explain things correctly, define things correctly. Socialism is such a spooky word because one side consistently batters it and the other side isn't going to defend it because they're not really interested in socialism either. And then they convince their voters that, hey, socialism bad. But then you have someone who, again, is just, he barely used the word socialism, you know, like Zohran Mamdani barely used the word. He used the word affordability. He put it into our, you know, seared it into our consciousness. And I think there are deeper things at play here. And some of the things I want to like kind of share, let me share some of the takeaways from these, some of these elections that happened, because the big ones that we keep hearing about, right, are, what are the big ones? It was Zohran and NYC. We had the two mayoral races that were pretty big in Virginia and New Jersey. And then we had a couple super majorities in Jersey and Virginia too in their state assemblies. Prop 50 in California passed, which is big. That's on redistricting. But there are other things that have happened that have never happened in these kind of elections. And let me just read some of these things to you. In Georgia, Democrats flipped 2 seats in non-federal races, like statewide races. And that's the first time Democrats have had those seats since 2006. Okay, so we're talking a long time. This is like even beyond the Ossoff, the going blue Senate kind of crazy things that happen. So this is a deeper sign now that Georgia is maybe not an anomaly anymore, that Georgia is slowly coming around. And this is, marking the first statewide non-federal wins for Democrats there since 2006. In Pennsylvania, Democrats preserved their majority, which is also big. I
just want to add a quick thought on that too, just on Georgia specifically. When you said that, I'm like, that's a testament to like Stacey Abrams' legacy too, right? We're also starting to see some of the dividends paying of people who have been organizing there really aggressively for a while now. And you see sometimes that work takes a while to really show on the smaller races, but that's a really cool one.
Absolutely. That's a big one. And my friend Ox is mentioning that Mississippi Democrats broke a super majority in Mississippi. Fucking Mississippi, man. This is like this is the metropolis of the the Confederates, I guess, or whatever you would call them now. This is the center. Mississippi, supermajority, broken by Democrats. It's just insane. These are state level wins and like local level wins that are so important to the Democratic movement, right? That are so important to the progressive movement. This, again, I talked to Marissa offline about this. This could very well be the beginning of a progressive Tea Party movement. And that's how the Tea Party on the right started. And they ended up capturing the party. Okay, so like this idea that progressives cannot capture the Democratic Party, it's not completely impossible. Okay, I don't want to give you guys like, I don't want to give false hope. It's going to take a lot of work that we are currently doing, right, on like local level politics. We need to flood that zone. That zone is the pipeline to making things the way we want it. And we just have to study the Tea Party of like the Obama era Tea Party. Obama gave them the motivation. right? Just like Trump is giving us the motivation a little bit here. And I think that there are signs here that have never appeared for the Democrats, like never appeared for the Democrats. These signs are starting to flicker. And it's not the corporatists that are responsible for that. The corporatists and the Wall Streeters are not going into rural areas. They're not going into fucking Georgia. The Democratic establishment's not going into, like some of these rural areas in Georgia. These are working class people that are doing the work. They are the ones that are moving it from the ground level. And we get so captured by these national races, and you should to an extent. Keep in mind that like midterm election, I mean, these special elections, when the current presidential party is in power, they tend to overperform for the opposite party too. So that is part of what's going on here. But these these ground level races where a lot of attention isn't going to right now on a national level. And again, some of the demographics that are coming out, the Latino slump for Trump is real. This is something that they considered. They were thinking, because he captured a big Latino chunk in 2024. Like I always like to tell my liberal friends, the guy who won Latinos is the guy who said, I'm going to round up Latinos. You know how like historically bad you have to be as a campaign to lose that demographic to the guy who said, I'm going to round them up. But Latinos aren't stupid either. They saw some populism in Trump. And now they're seeing what they voted for. And obviously that slump is for real now, because no one is going to cheer on their family members and their friends being caught up in this web. So I think like this momentum is important. I think as we look into the future, it's very important we learn some lessons here and when we keep our eyes on the prize, that like some of these races were not working class races. They were opposite of Trump races. And I'm looking at New Jersey as one of the states, just because I've done a little bit of research on Mikey Sherrill. I want to do a little more research on the New Jersey governor, but Mikey Sherrill is a former CIA agent. She is kind of pro Wall Street. She is a woman, and she talks a good game, and her speech was like amazing. But again, she's taken like 200 grand from AIPAC. I would like to know what her position is on Israel, because I have a feeling I do know what it is. And we need to like keep these things in mind, because what do we want after Trump, right? We keep talking about that. What do we want after Trump? Is back to the same AIPAC genociding Democrats that got us Trump? Remember what got us Trump. Like it was nothing excited us to go out there and vote. I still fell in line. Doesn't mean I'm not getting yelled at still by the same people, but why fall in line anymore? Like it's policies and excitement that is going to get people to show up in places like Georgia, in those small rural areas in Georgia. It's not influencers. It's not shaming people into like, oh, the Nazis are coming. The Nazis are here, brother. You can't scare us anymore. They're here. They're in power. They own every lever of power. So I think these are important things, like kind of like a guarded optimism, very optimistic, very hopeful, but keep your senses about you, because they're going to try to hijack this. The establishment will try to hijack this. It's not enough just to talk about affordability, okay? Mikey Sherrill says affordability a lot, but I want to see, are you going to offer free buses in Virginia? Like, what's the question? What is the actual policy here that's going to be affordable?
Well, I would just like to take the opportunity to disagree with you vehemently, and that is, I am delusionally optimistic, and I will not
It's
be
fair.
convinced otherwise.
It's cool. Hey, I'll take it.
And that's okay. And we can just sit on the opposite side of that. That's fine. We can still be friends. I think something that is making me feel delusionally optimistic as well is like beyond the policy piece, right? With ZOHRAN, we got a new blueprint for a likable politician. We got a new blueprint for how somebody can run a campaign and not have people hold their nose and say, well, it's better, it's the lesser of two evils. I think a lot of us forgot what that experience was like. We forgot the experience of sincerely supporting somebody because we really felt like they were the best option. And he has an energy about him that I think is very powerful in and of itself. I think the fact that he is an individual that has positive charisma and that despite the fact that he has been like just dragged through the mud, he never, almost to an inhuman level, he never like came off as combative. He like managed to be this very positive figure throughout all of this. And the seeing all the edits and all the people that are in like shipping him and his wife, and there's all this kind of like fun stuff on the side, right? Which you can argue is problematic or whatever if you want to. But I think it shows that like we want to have some level of trust in our representative government again, right? Like we're all coming from a place now where we're so mistrustful of all of these people. And so to be able to have somebody that we can all kind of say, you know what, he seems like he's a pretty good guy. He seems like he likes his wife. He seems like he respects women. He seems like he respects people that are different than him. It's just kind of nice, right? And I think that that's powerful because it feels like we have just been in a race to the bottom for years. And to have somebody come out there with like class and elegance and kind of generosity of spirit, I think that there's something that's like really positive that comes from that as well. Bridget says, "Weed Moms for Hope." I want a t-shirt. I'll make a t-shirt that says "Weed Moms for Hope."
No, I mean, it's spot on. I mean, and I think he provides, I think we touch on kind of like these gender norms too in our conversations and like the experiences we have, the experiences I have talking online about masculinity and his charisma. And I feel like everything that I talk about that is important to being a man, like today in 2025, he outwardly exudes all those things, right? Like, I don't know who he is behind closed doors. I do know it's very difficult to put up that act when the cameras are on you at all times. It's hard to not be authentic in those moments. People think of Zohran as extremely authentic. And whether or not that's real doesn't matter, right? I mean, people believe it, and that's all that matters. And people that have talked to him have told you he's the real deal. I've never met him. I hope I do someday, because I think he, for me personally, represents a bit of a North Star, a bit of hope in a time where I am constantly struggling in this intersectionality of like my skin tone in a state that has a very white skin tone, right? And taking it from both sides, taking it from people who are darker than me, taking it from people that are lighter than me, and having like my culture used as a cudgel, as something that like should shame me into voting one way, or I should be voting the opposite way. And this guy has my background. He is pretty much like, his story is my story, you know, like he's younger than me, but he didn't run from his story. You know, he didn't like dial down anything that he was saying. He had blinders on. He had, one of us want to see the Han. It's my Middle Eastern girl right there. Like, he's just, he made a lot of us feel seen, you know, like he did. The attacks that he was taking from Democrats, like, is the attacks that I take from Democrats, right? Like Kristen Gillibrand calling him like jihadi, or Republican candidates coming on Twitter and saying he's little Muhammad. I mean, could you imagine people saying that about to a Jewish person? Like, it's so fucking surreal to me that like, it's just, we pretend like it's just, not a big deal, you know, because it's like about a Muslim. Oh yeah, he did 9/11. Like, these attacks, the way, for me, I deal, not all the time, but like, it's hard not to take these things personally sometimes. And for him, the man had joy the entire time. He was having a fucking blast. I behoove all of you, go to Fox News and watch his interview on Fox News. If you want to see a fucking masterclass of like charisma and honesty and like breaking through the bullshit, how many, by the end of it, they were fans. They might have voted for Zohran. The hosts at Fox, by the end, they were like, well, shit, like maybe we'll vote for Zohran, Mom. You know, like he's that electric, you know, he's that. And that makes him our Trump. I hate to say it that way. He is our Trump, not in the terrible way. Okay, don't clip me that way. He's bulletproof right now. He's charismatic. Say what you want about Trump. He was charismatic. He might be a shell of himself now, but when he was running in 2016, He was charismatic. People found him entertaining. Whether or not that you know take the morality out of it, that was part of his shtick, and that is Mamdani is bulletproof right now. He gave a playbook to every progressive candidate in the country. Again, you can't run it exactly like he ran it, but there are winning issues that are bipartisan, that are like nationwide, and you just have to lean into them and skip the traps, fuck the traps, be disciplined, right? Like, I never see the man not smile. Even even when they told Cheney, there's a video of them telling
can you
him.
pull it up?
Yeah, hold on. Let me show you guys. I'm gonna show you guys a video here of Dick Cheney and hold on, let me see if I can find it here. They're telling Zohran. They're telling Zohran that Dick Cheney just died. And he's at the polls. Let me see. I think this is it. Oh, here we go. Okay. I found it. Perfect. And they show his wife here too, who is just the image of class, you know, and they seem so like in tune with each other. Like, even if you watch this, just watch their body language, like when they're being told and how they like move together. It's just so, it's very interesting.
If you're
to
on
watch.
TikTok, we're gonna screen share on Twitch. I can't see your screen yet. Are you?
Yeah. I'm gonna show it right now.
On TikTok.
Here it is.
We are screen sharing on Twitch, so feel free to join us over there by searching for either of our handles. This was my favorite thing I saw yesterday.
When did that happen? Just earlier this morning.
It was so like both of them.
One more, just keep letting it run for a
Yeah,
second.
of course. Sorry. I'll turn the sound off here so it can be. Go ahead.
The way they just both lean in perfectly in sync, and the way her face doesn't move even a muscle. They are like, that is two people who have telepathy with each other. They know each other well. That killed me, right?
Just unbothered. Like, it's just all
killed me.
Like, what's the weather?
Like, what a perfect example, right? Of like how to communicate so much by unoffensive, right? Still managed to communicate what he was trying to communicate without having to get his hands dirty. And that's very, very powerful. And I think he is such a powerful messenger. You know, you were talking about how he's got the Fox News hosts eating out of his hands. It's because these policies are popular. They have engineered all of this other shit to keep us fighting with each other. But these policies, when we're talking about them at their core, are not controversial. And so that is why he is so scary to people, because somebody like him, and even like somebody like John KIPER, arguably, is able to communicate with a different type of person than somebody like I can communicate with and get these points across, right? And so those types of messengers are very, very powerful in this moment, because we're breaking through all of this American imperialist propaganda to get to the point, all this capitalist propaganda to get to the point of, we have enough money to take care of each other in this country. There's no reason we can't take care of each other. And that's dangerous to everybody. That's dangerous to all the billionaires and all the power structures. But that is where my optimism is, my delusional optimism is coming from today, is knowing that like he is such a threat to the empire in such an exciting way.
Absolutely. I mean, I think like the best sign for me during the campaigning was the amount of billionaires that were coming out and being like, he's going to be bad for New York City. And I'm just thinking, like, what a way to convince people that he's going to be good for New York City. Like, it is like such a promotional tool, because I just think like if the billionaires are scared, we're on the right path here. You know, like that's like how I generally think. If the billionaires don't like it, if they think it's a bad idea, because generally my mindset, and I don't know, I'm sure you feel the same way. I think we've talked about this, but I don't think there are any ethical billionaires, obviously. I mean, I think to get there, you had to do some pretty fucked up shit. And I personally think that like, if you're putting the fear of God into like Elon Musk, or like, you know, that dude, I forget his name now, but he's that guy that was like doxing college kids constantly during the the Palestinian protests. He's this billionaire from New York who's on Fox all the time. He was like doxing college kids like for a year, right? And he's going on panels being like, I don't know, maybe Trump should send the National Guard to New York for the elections because this is really bad. And I'm like, holy shit, they are terrified of this man. Like they are, and I'm like, my Lord, this is like, oh, like better than sex almost, like watching this interview, you know, like watching this man just like the white top billionaire man, just like, he's really just seeing his future. Like he's watching himself being pulled out of his own house by a group of us crazy people, you know, like it's just like he's seeing all his whole life flash before his eyes when he sees Zohran, and he should. You know, if billionaires are being intelligent right now, there is a wave coming. You do not want to be caught on the wrong side of that wave. You better sniff it out now because, brother, they're winning rural, races in Georgia right now. Get into. They're coming for you. We're all coming for you.
I would like to remind the billionaires that rich people used to invest in libraries and public facilities to stay in the good graces of the community because they realize that we will eat, we're hungry, right? We'll eat the rich, and we are very, very hungry. And so we're living in a moment where it feels like the billionaires are openly mocking us. Like we didn't talk about this at all. Has the Sephora thing made it across your internet, Aria, the Sephora Christmas ad with Mariah Carey? We didn't talk about this.
You know what? I only know because a creator made a video about Sephora, and another big thing was like Travis Kelce's like ex-girlfriend did something too, I guess, like as a shout out as a shot to Taylor Swift. Those are the two things that were all over my FYP. I have no idea what they're referring to, so definitely let me know. What is this Sephora thing?
Okay, so I'll catch you up with it. The Sephora thing basically was Sephora put out an ad with Mariah Carey and Billy Eichner making jokes about how Christmas is canceled this year because people are boycotting Christmas or people are striking Christmas. And it was essentially like a very thinly veiled reference to the fact that Americans are starting to boycott these big companies and are talking about canceling Christmas and talking about canceling the gift hyper-capitalist component of Christmas. And it has been inspiring a lot of backlash because it feels like the billionaires are playing in our face. And it really feels like a miscalculation on the part of the ruling class. This feels like a Hunger Games moment. This feels like a let them eat cake moment to sort of be made fun of in that way, right? Well, people are literally going hungry, right? Like quite literally, like we haven't been talking about the SNAP situation much today, but like we've talked about it in the past. And we're in this very, very intense moment where people are not able to eat. People can't buy formula for their kids. People can't buy, like there's some really scary shit happening right now today. And to see this kind of stuff, the billionaires are playing in our faces right now. And so all that to say, it feels so deeply satisfying to see this message that we are gaining power and we are taking power back. It is so satisfying to watch them start to process that message. And it is going to be, I look forward to seeing the reactions roll in because this only energizes the progressive base too, right? Because I was thinking about this, you and I were talking about this last night. I was like, today, everyone's going to be on social media saying, who's the next Zohran, right? Because that's just what we do. That's the way the media works. That's the way social media works. They're going to be looking for who's the next one. What's the story that we can tell? And there's all this space now. And there's a playbook that's been laid for everybody who's running these progressive campaigns right now is to take a look at like what's resonating, what's working. Look at I think anybody working on a campaign right now, if you're running for something or thinking about it, is like, spend an hour just looking through TikTok videos of him because like that alone was like so influential in how he was able to get.
Sorry, I might have lost you on my main Twitch for a second. Hold on. I see you, but I can't hear you. It's been doing this to me today for some reason. Say something. Okay, I see. I hear you. I did not hear the very last part of what you said.
That's it. I just did a nice recap of all my points
Oh,
and brought them
cool.
back into a cohesive solution.
So
And
sorry about
now
that.
I'm passing it back to you.
Perfect. Well, no,
No,
I mean,
I can't remember what I said 30
no,
seconds ago. It's
I'm
like it comes out of my mouth and it's gone.
it's totally okay. I mean, I'm pretty sure we're going to be agreeing here, but I'm with you.
Oh yeah, I gotta go. I'm done.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
2 o'clock.
it's too. Time
Let's
flies
wrap
when
this
you're
shit
having
up.
fun talking to governors.
Yeah.
No, so my whole thing here is that the let them eat cake thing is so poignant right now, because again, if you just look at the White House, right? Like, I think that is the biggest example of the let them eat cake. The man had a Gatsby party, like a Roaring 20s party, which is like, that's done by design. It's not randomly a Roaring 20s party, okay? That is a dog whistle of dog whistles, okay? It's a dog whistle for the most basic humans out there. It's not random, okay? That is purposefully a Roaring 20s party. And then the way they are doing the ballroom is just insane. You know, people are like in breadlines where we're cutting snap, and the man is building this ballroom, talking about all these CEOs that are donating to it, and it is Hunger Games. It is very Hunger Games. It is this. It's kind of dystopian almost, like and that's what I mean to people. That's what I say to people, that like, if you have this this vision of post Trump being anything like it was before, it's time to buckle up now, because things are going to start looking much different post Trump. It's going to be very important to consider that. And yeah, I think these are important things. I don't want to go forever here. We've been talking forever, but I think this was good. We touched on some good things here regarding to the future.
We did. We solved it. I think, as always, we solved it.
We fixed everything.
We figured it
So
out.
go home.
So thanks for being part of this with us today, y'all. We'll be back on Friday, same time, probably
Same time.
12-ish.
Absolutely.
And we'll look forward to chatting with you then. I hope you guys have a good afternoon.
Yeah, and if you guys, real quick reminder, if you guys have like the Twitch app, you guys can set notifications on and stuff too. So like, you know, I might randomly go live. I know, like, I've been thinking about going live to talk about, I want to talk about Sudan. Sometimes I feel like there's so many things going on, and there's other things that I want to talk about. So I'm not always going to advertise that. So if you have your notifications on, you want to come hang out with me on Twitch, if I'm going live, just like keep those on.
Cool. All right, guys.
All right, guys. Love you.
That's it. That's all I got. Have a good one.
Be safe.
Bye.